Hello and welcome to the Wendell Effect for the Indian markets. This is Brandon Wendell with you, and just a reminder, we're not registered broker-dealers or investment advisors. Taking a look at this information from an educational standpoint only, and we're going to not give any personalized recommendations or any buy, sell, or hold recommendations there, and past performance no indication of future results. We are not subject to trading restrictions either, so we get a position of security and initiate one at any time. Make sure you stay in touch with us. You can always shoot me an email at brandonwendell.cmt@gmail.com and hit me up on Twitter at TraderBdub. And you can also find us here on YouTube on the Wendell Effect, obviously. So for the week of November 6th, we're going to take a look at the Indian markets and see what we have going for us. Overall, for last week, we were relatively green for many of the markets, but we did have a few standouts. Axis Bank was red, ICICI Bank, Infosys also red. Taking a look at the Nifty, we're in a bullish move. You can see we had an impulse up, basically back up to the target number 1 last week. We pulled back just slightly, and it now looks like we're going to be marching our way up towards that 19,636. Overall, the market is gaining more momentum. You can see that on the RSI here, as we have a higher RSI than we had before. So definitely more momentum than previously. Looking at the daily chart, really there's no overhead supply to hold us down from getting that next target. This was our impulse on the daily correction back, so I have a target here of 18,547 for this week. We may not get all the way up there, but we should be at least a bit more bullish by the end of the week before we, compared to where we started off. Let's put it that way. I just don't think we're going to make it all the way up to that point, but we could be a little bit choppy like we were towards the end of last week. Looking at the 4-hour chart, big key thing is going to be right here, starting off on the beginning of the week. If we make a new high, we need to do it with more momentum. If we don't get that new momentum as we break to a new high on the price, then expect price to retreat a little bit and do a retracement, possibly back to this 38.2, which is 17,712. So that's kind of what I'm seeing right now, is that we may get a little bit of weakness to start off the week before we continue to rally. Looking at Reliance was one of the big pieces of fueling the move to the upside altogether in the markets. You can see Reliance was very bullish last week. We did have that one gap up and retreat, but we ended up filling that gap already, and we have plenty of bullish momentum. So if we do pull back at all, I'm expecting a bounce at 24.6845, but most likely we're going to continue to go up, and I've got my first upside target here at 26.17 before we stall a little, and then possibly go much, much higher. Looking at Reliance, though, this week, November 6th through the 11th, historically has been a little bit bearish. 80% of the time for the last 10 years, Reliance has gone down during this time of year. So that's why I was saying, we might be getting a bit of a pullback towards that 24.68, but that's because, again, you see that historically, except for last year, for the most part, we were either flat or bearish. Now, it's not a huge drop. It's 1.7%. But that's still a significant amount, a bit of a pullback that we should expect here. Moving on to Infosys, same thing. You see it's only gone up 1 year out of the past 10, and the average pullback's a little over 1.25%. So we should expect Infosys to continue to be a bit bearish here. And looking at the chart on Infosys, you can see that we have been getting a correction right now. I was thinking maybe we were done with a 38% correction, but overall it looks like it could go back a little bit further to 50% before we go higher. So we are in a corrective mode right now. You can see Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of last week, and based on this historical trend for this week, we should be able to continue to pull back a little bit more, but eventually look for a bounce. We're still relatively bullish on this stock. HDFC Bank, also slightly bearish over the last 10 years. It's kind of a mix, actually. You can see it's about 46% of the time it goes up, and then 54% of the time it goes down. So a little more losers than winners, but not by much. Don't expect a whole lot out of HDFC Bank this week. You can see we're in a sideways correction. We may just go a bit sideways now, right around the 1492, 38.2% correction. So if we do get some more bullishness, which we eventually will, it looks like, then we can break out and possibly reach our next target. But as of right now, looks like it might go a little sideways this week, and that'll put a little bit of weight on the Nifty as well. Bajaj Financial Services, that was one that we were looking at for a long. Obviously, it bounced off our area here, or close to it twice, and has now hit target number 1. So hopefully we're able to get some profits on that, and it looks like it's going to continue to go up. When you get a big move like this, usually you'll get a bit of a pullback first before it goes higher. So if you want to look for an intraday opportunity, maybe on an hourly chart for a possible demand zone where you could buy a pullback, I'm not sure if we have any. Let's take a look real quick. I'll bring up my charts here. There we are. And if I go to a smaller time frame, you see on the 4-hour there's actually a little bit of demand right here just before the breakout point. So that's one potential pullback area. And I'll give you the prices on that in just a moment here. We're looking about 17.1840 to 17.2785. And then if I go down to a smaller time frame, maybe 60-minute, well, we don't really have anything other than right here where we based right at the target. So yeah, they may get a pullback to 17.2785 to 17.1840 for a possible rally once again. I don't know if we'll pull back that much, but it's a possibility. On the Nifty Bank Nifty, we are trying to break out again, but you can see we're having problems with momentum. You cannot make new highs unless you have more momentum. So when we have that weakness there, that's called a negative divergence once it hits that same high as we had before, if the momentum is not there. And that'll lead to another correction. We could pull back all the way to 38,000 again. So keep an eye on that. If we do break out, we need to have higher momentum or a bigger reading on the RSI than we had previously. If we fail to do that, expect the pullback. If we do, then expect the prices to continue to rally. Looking at the daily chart, I'm expecting that correction, as I said, because we see lack of momentum here. We're pulling back a little bit. So I would expect a pullback to about 40,038. Basically 40,000 is where I'm targeting this little pullback before we can bounce again. We could even go as deep as 39,500 before we bounce. On the 4-hour, sorry, it's mislabeled, it should be 4-hour chart right there. You can see the same thing. We've been going sideways for a little while here, losing momentum. You got to wonder, is that just a pullback before we rally, or is it a pullback that we're going to come back down towards that 40,000 area, which is really our next area of demand. So keep an eye out for that. Anyway, some new trade ideas are actually follow-ups on the ones we had. They're not really new. ITC still has not pulled back, I believe. Yeah, you can see we went a bit sideways and actually hit our targets before pulling back to our entry point. I don't think this is going to happen. We do have a divergence. Notice prices made that new high, but we didn't do it on the indicator, so we should get a correction back down towards the 333. I don't know if it'll let us in or not. We'll have to wait and see. Ashok Leland unfortunately broke out and used the upper zone. A lot of times when we have the two different zones, typically, if you try to enter the lower zone, you got to do a little bit of confirmation. It did happen, but then we ended up breaking to the upper zone and holding that one instead. So it kind of shook us around a little bit, unfortunately. And it is heading down towards the targets, but unless you took the second zone, you got stopped out. And Motherson, unfortunately, has not rallied up into the entry. We're just going a bit sideways. We have earnings coming up, so keep an eye out for that. And earnings could drive prices into the zone to give you that shorting opportunity. We'll just have to wait and see. And Central Bank of India went above 60 on the RSI. And basically, when that happens, supply is a lie. As you can see, we broke right through. So I have it on the daily chart rather than the 4-hour, but the same thing happened. We had too much bullish momentum, so we broke that zone. Anyway, that's it for this week. If you got any questions, please send me emails and let me know. That way I can go ahead and update the videos and make sure I tailor it more towards what you want to see. And until next time, trade safe, trade well, everybody. Take care.